Hey everybody, just wanted to give some updates, do a little bit of chatting, talk about the future of Into Octagon, or ILUFC, whatever you want to call it. Get into the future of this, what's going to happen next. Obviously, we have our upcoming events, UFC 32, then UFC 33, UFC 32 later this month, November 26th, UFC 33 to be announced date in December next month, and then UFC 34, which will be in January of next year, obviously, which is next year, obviously. I don't know why I had to specify that. I'm not insulting your guys' intelligence, I swear. But anyway, so before UFC 32, for the last few months, I want to say since April, it's either been since April or May. I'm not sure. We've been doing exclusively written shows. Usually we would just do written shows for the fight nights or Friday night fights or stuff like that. But we've been doing exclusively written shows since the spring of this year. The reason for that is simply because, one, I got very busy with my job, and two, I was getting kind of tired of UFC 4. I was just getting really tired of the game. There were a lot of problems with the game that were just really annoying to me. I was looking for ways to spice it. I was thinking of using UFC Undisputed 3, but there's no women in that game, so that's a hurdle. And there's a lot of women fighters in this promotion. And I was thinking of going back to UFC 3, which is what I did for the Jones and Snyder fight. I went back to UFC 3 because everything about UFC 3 is better. The clinching is better. In my opinion, the striking is still better. The grappling is still better. The customization options are still better. If you notice in UFC 4, all the created fighters have the exact same entrance. It's really annoying. There's like 3 fighting types or 4 fighting types you can choose from. They're all basically the same. Even though they say that there's they have these subcategories, they're basically the same. You reduce your fighter to nothing. You have all these stupid cosmetics, which are cool for customization options, but you don't just get to pick them free like you do in WWE games. You have to actually spend real money, or you have to grind and earn it. Stupid. And I use earn very loosely. Because if you're an offline player, you're not going to sit there and be playing a bunch of fights, right? You're not going to be sit there and playing online and doing all these challenges and stuff like that. You're going to be playing it to have fun. You're not worried about challenges. Anyway, sorry, small tangent there. But, yeah, so that's why there was a lot of, written shows between then and now. UFC 31... from last week, I was going to have that, as UFC 5 came out, I was going to have that being UFC 5. I got the game early access on Monday for that sole purpose. But as I'm playing the game, it's so bare bones. It's to the point where I would have to edit a lot of stuff, and it would take a lot longer. And if I rushed it, it would just be in a place where I'm not happy with it, and if I want the return to the visual side of ILUFC to be a grand spectacle, to be something I'm proud of. And if I'm not proud of it, I can't get into it. That's just the way it is. If I'm not proud of the show, I can't get into it. I don't care how many people like it or what they say. If I personally can't get into it, it's a failure to me. But must be a little bit of the perfectionist in me, but still. UFC 5 is in a state right now. I mean, just to list some of the things, like, there's no entrances or walkouts for 3-round fights. These have been in UFC games forever. I don't know why they take that out, but there's only entrances for 5-round fights, championship fights, or 5-round main events. And that's annoying. That would mean that I would have to do 2 separate recordings of each fight, and that is annoying. I would have to start a fight as a 5-round fight just to record the entrances. I would have to exit that fight, and then I have to go and do a 3-round fight. This would only be for the 3-round fights, but for the 3-round fights, I would have to record 2 separate recordings for each fight, each 3-round fight. A 5-round fight entrance, and then go back to the 3-round for the actual fight. And that's just that would just take a lot of time, and time that I really didn't have for 5 days. Um, Besides, I was busy that week anyway, so. There's also the fact that Herb Dean is in every single fight. He's the only referee in the game. Now, I don't know why this is. You have this new engine that you're hyping up, this Frostbite engine. It can only handle one referee in a video game. I don't understand. There's been referees in UFC, multiple referees in UFC games for years. I don't know why all of a sudden it's Herb Dean, just Herb Dean. These are changes that are it's baffling and annoying. They have things in the game for years, and then you play the latest one and you just take it out. And then with EA games, it's a roll of the dice. You never know what's going to be there next year. You never know what's going to be there in the next installment of the game because they just randomly take things out. And I like the immersion purposes. If it's just Herb Dean as a referee for every fight, it breaks the immersion. You know, that's a lot of what I like to add to the shows is the immersion. Multiple referees throughout the night, just like it would be in the real UFC. There are some other things like the camera is really bad in UFC 5 at this state. It's terrible. It's actually god awful, the camera. It actually gives me motion sickness sometimes. There's still some problems with the grappling. But I'm talking about things that I think are more likely to get fixed. Like adding more referees. I think that should be easy to do. Also, there's a lack of fighters in the game. There's not a lot of fighters, so UFC 4, I could use Brock Lesnar for events and it would be an authentic Brock Lesnar actual model in the game. He's not in this game. They took him out this game, so I'll have to make Brock Lesnar myself. Stuff like that that would just it requires more work on my part, right? Because EA can't do their jobs. There's a lot of other things with the presentation that would require me to edit, like Bruce Buffer. For some reason, in prior UFC games, his introductions would be massive. His introductions would be grand spectacles, right? He would say the fighter's height. He would say the fighter, their background in martial arts. He would say where they come from, their record, etc., etc. In this game, he just says they're fighting out of this is their name, and that's it. It's like he's rushing through the introductions. Like he has a grocery list he has to get to. Or he's going to miss his daughter's wedding recital. Like, I don't understand, There's stupid things that they just take out the game for no reason. And, I would have to... I can't really have that, in these shows. It's annoying. I can't really have that. I mean, I could, but I wouldn't like it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would like Bruce Buffer to have an actual full introduction, and I could edit it myself. I'm pretty sure I could find a way to edit that myself. But again, it would require more time that I didn't have last week. Anyway, there's something else more things I wanted to address. As for the written shows, sorry. As for UFC 32, that is going to be in UFC 5. It might be in UFC 3. I don't know yet. It might be a mix of all those, UFC 5, UFC 4, UFC 3. It might just be UFC games in general. There's this guy I followed in the past. He did like WWE simulations. I think his name was BJ Grand, sorry. And when WWE, the 2K games came out, I think it was 2K15 or 2K16 or something like that. And they had limited options as well. He just combined them. He combined 2K14 and 2K15 or 16 or whatever. And I'm thinking of doing that, like just combining it. It's going to be jarring in some spots, graphical changes and all that, but I mean, I'm hoping UFC 5, my hope is that UFC 5 gets these patches throughout the weeks because the event is November 26th, so there is a lot of time, but hoping that UFC 5 gets these patches before I actually sit down and record these fights. I hope UFC 5 gets some substantial patches. They did have a patch, but all they added was Halloween cosmetics because why would they actually be concerned about fixing the game? All they care about is cosmetics. Why would they actually be concerned about fixing the game that they released in such a poor state? Oh my god. It doesn't matter because people will still defend it anyway. They will never call it out. Like, even if you like the game, you have to admit there are several flaws with it. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent again. So yeah, my hope is that by the time I start recording these fights, there's like substantial improvements to the game. Like, even just minor ones. Maybe, like, more than one referee in the entire game. I don't know why that even needs to be said. More than one referee in the entire game? Could that be something that is, I don't know, like, added? So silly. Maybe entrances for all fights, not just 5-round fights. Like, Are there no entrances? The game is supposed to be an authentic UFC simulation, as real as it gets. It says it's as close as you're going to get to the real UFC. And UFC real life, you turn on UFC and you see them skip the entrances for the 3-round fights on the main card anyway. Do you see that? I don't see that. Do you see Herb Dean as the only referee? I don't see that. Do you see Bruce Buffer rushing through his introductions like he just fucking DVR'd Dancing with the Stars and has to go watch it? I don't see that. Anyway. Oh, God. So, yeah, I'm hoping, I can get this done in UFC 5. Let's hope. That's my hope. But UFC UFC 32, no matter what, is going to be a visual. It's going to be a live show, not written. As for the written shows, there will still be written shows, probably for the fight nights. I mean, I was thinking of doing fight nights again because I used to do fight nights like on UFC 4 visual. I might go back to that depending on the reactions and responses I get, but we'll see. But there might be written shows for like Friday night fights and stuff like that. Friday night fights, obviously press conferences, stuff like that will all be written still. Speaking of Friday night fights, that's going to be coming up soon. It's going to be starting up soon as in the developmental format. Lots of new faces on that. Lots of new people on that. Debuting people with less than stellar records, people who haven't really done anything yet. There's no reason to rush them to the main cards. In my opinion, it doesn't make sense. But let people get their reps in. That's the whole point of it. But out of the way. Finish and decisions, by the way. I want to talk about that. Finish decisions rates. Something I've seen mentioned before. There's a lot of compared to the real life UFC, I think they were like 52% of fights ended in finishes in 2022, I want to say. Let me see. Yeah, 52% of fights ended in finishes in 2022. That's up from 49% in 2021, so a 3% increase in finishes across the board in UFC. That's across all divisions. Obviously, women's fights in UFC have the least amount of finishes. I kind of want to replicate that. I kind of want to have less finishes. Why? Because for the simple fact that, it's again, it's like an immersion thing for me. If everyone's getting finished, then who can you care about? Because like everyone gets finished. Like it's kind of weird if everyone gets finished. There has to be decisions. There has to be competitiveness. There has to be competitive fights. There has to be. I mean, you can still have a competitive fight and get finished, but you know what I'm saying. There has to be, more rounds for everybody, and it's harder to, at least for me anyway, to take someone seriously when every time they lose, it's because they get finished. There should be there should be decision losses. There should be, there should be split decisions and stuff like that. I'm gonna try my damnedest to make those. Obviously, I'm not saying I'm gonna go in there and script it, and make it so it absolutely happens. But I'm gonna try my damnedest to use these tuners and sliders and turn down damages and stuff. But yeah, that's one of my goals here is to. Kind of curb that finish rate, because I feel like in IOUFC the finish rate is more closer to like 76, I want to say. Probably closer to 80% finish rate. It's like every fight ends in a finish, and it's kind of immersion breaking, but still, at the same time, whatever. It is, it is fantasy league, it's fantasy, right? And expanding divisions. I was looking through the divisions for fights and stuff, and the women's divisions have a lot, and then the men's divisions don't really have that many. I'm trying to expand that, have some filler fights. Don't have to necessarily be portrayed by anyone or anything like that, but, just filler fighters that can fill the gap and get more fights in there and, have more fights to look forward to. I was especially having this problem at, like, middleweight, and middleweight especially. I was having this issue at middleweight. Like, the top fighters at middleweight are so they're top, like they're so big, they're such big deals. But then like there's no, to use wrestling terminology, there's no mid card for middleweight, right? And that applies for a couple of the divisions here, more than a couple, but I'm trying to expand some divisions like flyweight, the men's flyweight, the women's featherweight, the middleweight, the heavyweight, light heavyweight, super lightweight, obviously, but that's newer, so that's okay. That's another goal, is to expand these divisions. Let's see. Approach to original characters and OC's original characters. Try to have more of them that are like. I'm trying to have more of them that are like, original characters that have their own unique backstories, right? Because the point of this is that it's supposed to be like a living world, a living universe, a living, breathing universe, and a big part of that is having characters that have unique backstories that come from all jacks of life, all trades. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but you can determine what I meant by that sentence 5 seconds ago. Still, the point is that more original characters. Can't be having 58-year-old Stipe Miocic in 10 years. But you know what I'm saying, like, to freshen things up, and I'm not talking about like legacy characters, like, oh, this person is the daughter of this person. I'm talking about more like completely original. That's what I'm aiming for. That's one of my goals here. And then website updates is another thing I want to address. Before I get to that, also looking for more like super fights. If you see on UFC 32, there's Conor versus Jake. There's a ton of super fights on there. Zari versus Angela, Conor versus Jake, Allen versus Anthony, Kamaru versus Anderson. So there's a lot of super fights. I'm looking for more like that as well. Just more, fun, exciting fights. Not everything has to be serious. Like even on the UFC 32 card, you see some hilarious fights like Antonio Brown versus Tom Brady, Elon Musk versus Mark Zuckerberg. Fights. I'm looking for more fights like that, attraction-based fights as well, that are just for fun. Like just loosen it up a little bit. Not everything has to be serious. Again, like I said, it is fantasy league. Not everything has to be serious. You should be able to have fun with this. And just enjoy some funny fights like Zuckerberg and Elon and Antonio Brown and Tom Brady, grudge beef fights. But yeah, more super fights coming in the future for sure. Last thing I want to talk about is the website updates. Now, website updates, as you see, the website has been updated. It's up to date now. Rankings are up to date. Roster is up to date. Records are up to date. All the results are up to date. All the events are up to date. I will be editing the Smack Talk, which will have to be up to date and stuff like that, and expanding the World of MMA page, the Expanded Universe page, as I call it internally. So, but for the most part, it is the new update, and in future updates, my goal with the website is to have it as streamlined as possible. My ways to do that, I'm figuring out. One thing on my mind is removing like who plays who muses whose who plays who. I don't really care to see that there. I'm the kind of guy where if I like to, when I read something, I like to absorb as little information as possible just to get the point. Like, you get the point. You get their name, you get their record, you get where they're from. That's the point. You don't need to know all the extra out of kayfabe, out of character information. So, and I don't care too much for that, right? Because everyone knows who they're representing. Everyone knows who they're playing. Everyone knows who they're portraying, right? I mean, everyone has their own internal list of this, whether it's on a Google Doc or on a website. It's kind of redundant to have it listed everywhere. It's kind of redundant. That's why I got rid of it on the event pages. If you notice, I got rid of that because it's like we know who's fighting who. We don't need to know who is portraying who. Like, it doesn't. I don't care for it personally. I think there should be as little information. I think less is more when it comes to stuff like that. You know, that's how I approach website design. And I'm not saying I'm a website design connoisseur, but I'm just saying, like, I'm trying to streamline the website. I'm trying to streamline it and make it, you know, as readable as possible without having chunks of information, chunks of stuff, you know. Just streamline it. Make it so, you know, give it brevity, and eventually come to a place where I'm completely happy with it. I mean, right now I'm very happy with where it's at and what it looks like. Come a long way from that first website I made by myself in like 6 hours overnight, but in the dead of the middle of the night. But as someone who hated the new Google Sites initially, I'm really coming into it now. I actually find it easier to use than the old Google Sites, even though the old Google Sites was more free. If you remember the old Google Sites, you could do pretty much anything on there. This new one, it is more limited, but it's also more user friendly, I suppose. When you get good at it, it's more user friendly. For a beginner, when I was first starting out using these new Google Sites, no, it was trash. I'm gonna be honest with you. But yes, that's yes, I wanna add you know, explore more features to the website. You know, add more features or revamp some features like the box office page. You know, there's a lot of old pages that I want to revamp. You know, take a second look at, or even remove altogether. I don't know, but there's still more work I want to do on these websites, and continue to update them, continue to make them better. You know, nothing's perfect. There's always room to improve for everything, and that's why I like to get people's feedback on the websites. You know, what they would like to see on there, any ideas you guys have, it should be on there. Any pages you would like to see redone or revamped, or, you know, even pages you feel like, oh, you know, we don't really need that here, we should do this instead. You know, any constructive ideas you can present. Anyway, that is going to be it for me. I don't want to take up too much of your guys' time. I think I went through a lot in 22 minutes. But yeah, if you guys have any ideas, feedback, all of that, perfect. Get to me, reach me. It's going to be great. Thank you.